Ladies and gentlemen, Liga is back this weekend, which means, unlike the Premier League predictions that everyone else is doing, we've got to do our Liga season predictions. We are going to get straight into it because there's a lot to get through, but if you are interested in my award winner predictions for the end of the season, go and check out the short form video on my channel. But like I said, we've got a lot to get through, 18 teams to break down and explain why I've put them where I have. If you do enjoy, please do like and please do subscribe, but let's get into it. Now, 18th, automatic relegation, and unfortunately bottom, I have Le Havre. So let's start with the positives before we get to the inevitable negatives. First off, they kept their manager Didier Digard, who's kept them up all these seasons. Next thing, I really like their transfer window. Although they haven't brought in Ligue 1 proven players, they've brought in good talents from around and then a little bit more experience in players like Amir Richardson. However, that's where the positives stops and we're straight to the negatives. They've lost two centre-backs in Aruna Songonte and Gauthier Lloris, who was their captain, and they're also potentially going to lose their star keeper Mori Diaw. Now, they do have Lionel Mpassi, who had a good World Cup and can be relied on, but it's a downgrade on your current best keeper. On top of that, they've lost a lot of creativity going forward. Sofiane Boufal, who only joined last season, is already gone. He's getting old. He only signed a one-year deal. But more to the point, Yassine Kester in the midfield is gone. He's gone for free to, I think, the La Liga second division. So that's going to be a big miss, the 25-year-old midfielder. I don't see them getting many goals at all. And with them losing two defenders and potentially their star keeper, I think it's going to be very leaky. And I just can't see Digard keeping them up one more time, scraping through. So I've got them plumb last. In 17th, and it's unfortunate to say this, but I've got Stade Brestois. Now, to be honest, I don't think there's any positives I can really give about this. The unfortunate passing of Eric Roy, who was in charge going into this season, has left a big void in the team in terms of the mental capacity of the team, because they've got everything on their mind that they've lost their coach while he was their coach. And then that leaves the void of they haven't got a manager. So his assistant has stepped up, but whether he can manage it going from assistant to the main club manager. Sometimes it goes well, and it went well for us with Pierre Sage. Other times it doesn't go well, and the team can just spiral out of control. But Julien Lachouet, that's for you to do the talking. Show us what you can do. And I really hope they can stay up just because of the context around the season. But I can't see it happening. They've had a really, really weak transfer window. They only started signing people just this last week, and it's been 2 frees and an undisclosed fee. They're about to lose their keeper who stepped in over Maetsky last season in Grégoire Couder. They could lose Ludovic Ajorc as the transfer window passes on. I believe he's been handed a contract extension, but there's interest from other Ligue 1 clubs, which can soon turn a player's head. And yeah, like with Le Havre, I can't see where the goals will be coming from. They haven't got the players. It just doesn't spell hope. And with a transfer window so weak and a season that wasn't great last season, let's be fair, I think they finished 14th, but they never really got into the top 10. I just can't see them staying up at all, to be honest. I'd love them to, just because of that context, but I can't see it happening. I just can't see them getting higher than 17th. Now, 16th, meaning the relegation playoff, I have Angers. Now, first off, I don't rate Stéphane Gilly, their new manager. He got sacked by Paris FC last season, and although he did get them into Liga, that was once the Red Bull project had started, or the Red Bull stakeholder had started. So the money was getting pumped in. They spent big for Ligue 2 standards. Then they spent big in Liga on anyone and everyone. And as we can see, they were near the relegation zone by January. Luckily, the recruitment stepped up a notch and they managed to survive. It wasn't under his control. Kombouaré came in and spearheaded that team up the order. Yeah, I don't rate the manager. And to be honest, I don't rate the squad. It's very much the same as last season, who didn't really get out of second gear in many games. They just didn't show up. Obviously, it's good to be able to keep players, but if you're not refreshing and rejuvenating the squad, you're just going to stagnate and fall down the order. And I think that's what's going to happen with Angers. Now, the good thing about 16th is it's a relegation playoff. And usually, although the statistics are in favour of the Ligue 2 team, the Ligue 1 team usually is able to hold their own against a lesser side. Now, the big negative before I get onto the big positive is the fact that Hervé Coffey, who was on loan in goal last season and had a magnificent season, is no longer there. He's gone back to Lens and then off to USG. They have recruited Anthony Lopez, who's obviously an esteemed Ligue 1 goalkeeper, but he's getting old. He's not as good as he once was. There are mistakes. There are poor moments with him being a shorter goalkeeper. Yes, he can do a job, and yes, he's got the experience, but it's definitely a step down from Hervé Coffey. And I think that explains the step down from them 12th, 13th, down to 16th. The one positive I did speak on, though, is Ousmane Simbokali, the Central African Republic striker they've signed this summer. I think they paid less than £1 million for him as well. He's had a really good preseason, so they are hopefully going to get some goals in the mix. And because their defence has pretty much stayed, I think they've only lost a couple of fullbacks. They might do all right, but I just can't see them getting away from the relegation zone. In 15th, I have Lorient. Now, there's not much to say with Lorient other than the fact they've lost their talisman in Pablo Pagis, and they've lost the manager that created all this goodness with not much to work with in Olivier Pantaloni. A lot of players that did well last season have left on frees. You're looking at Bamba Dieng and Samba Soumano. A couple of other players more in the defensive aspect. Your captain, Laurent Abidjal, who did just then get an ACL injury in his first week at Nice. But it's a lot of important players gone. Yes, they've been able to keep their star Arsène Kouassi, but what's a left-back going to do when the rest of the team is falling behind? Nothing. Not much to speak on Lorient. 15th place, they've got Alexandre Doujeu, who did well with not much at Angers, but not to the level of Pantaloni, not doing much because Bournemouth's management are treating it like Chelsea are with Strasbourg. Not much investment into the other side of the MCO. Now, as much as I dislike Will Still, I've got Auxerre up in 14th, which is an improvement on last season. Now, overall, I think they've had a pretty decent transfer window. Losing Sinayoko isn't ideal, but realistically, that was always going to happen. One thing that is good is keeping hold of Kevin Damois. I thought he was going to have loads of suitors from the Premier League, the Bundesliga, but no. There's been little bits here and there, but no concrete offers, and he's still there on August the 16th. It bodes well, that is for sure. But like I said, I really don't like Will Still and his super defensive management. Obviously, it lends itself well to a team like Auxerre, who were in a 5-3-2 with Pélissier, but it's just anti-football. He didn't succeed at Southampton. He didn't succeed at Lens. He was all right at Reims. Nah, that's a bit harsh. He was pretty good at Reims, but it was a low-tier side underperforming. This is another low-tier side, so can he overperform with them? Who knows? But if teams like Lorient and Angers weren't in bad situations, I'd probably have this Auxerre side lower down. But keep an eye out for Arta Pieuvre. I think that's some really good business. Out of the bottom 5 brings us up to 13th, and you might be surprised that I haven't had either of the newly promoted teams yet. But that stops now, because we've got Le Mans in 13th. Now, speaking to some people in the Ligue 1 community, a lot of them are writing Le Mans off completely. But there's a lot more to think about with this team. First off, the manager, Patrick Vieira, he's been there years. He's brought them up these divisions in this fairy tale, unfathomable story. And what's more, he's created a real family collective, which, as we saw with Lens with Pierre Sage last year, is so important to succeeding on low budget and difficult circumstances. Another thing that lends into that is they've really kept a lot of their core squad from last season. They had like 12 players out of contract this summer, and I think only 3 of them have left, or 3 important ones have left, which means 9 or so contracts have been renewed for important players and squad players in the team. That's really important for a team like Le Mans, who have low budget. They're expected to go down. If you can keep these players that know how to play with each other, know the manager, even if you're the complete underdog, you can snag a few results, especially against the lower teams that are also in this really low tier squad situation. And finally, the business side of things was always gonna be to do with keeping these players, which they've done. But then they've gone and signed Louis Mafuta from Guingamp, who got 15 goals in Ligue 2 last season, and he's had a really good pre-season. I think he's got 3 or 4 goals for them, which is really promising for a team that isn't expected to do well. And just while I'm recording this, they've inquired about Djibril Sidibe. If you can inject some real experience and then some Ligue 1 experience into this squad, I genuinely am hopeful for this team. I think it's understandable why people are completely writing them off, but you've got to be a little bit shrewd when you're looking at these things, when you're predicting a team. And I think Le Mans, with this family collective, can at least stay up. I don't think they'll be smashing it, but I think they'll stay up. In 12th, I have OGC Nice, based on the 16th place finish and the absolute crisis on and off the pitch we've got to bring our expectations down with Nice. They are going to be a bottom half of the table side for at least a year or two, maybe even more. They're still owned by Ineos and they have no intention to inject more money in. They've wanted to sell for at least a year now, and they even put them up for sale and then took them down, and they almost got sold, but then they didn't. I think that's because Ineos got greedy, but that doesn't bode well for the situation of Le Gym. The good news is they've got Olivier Pantaloni, who knows how to work with low resources and a club in an MCO that isn't backed up by the income that the big fish is. The Uniteds to the Nice, the Chelsea to the Strasbourg, the Bournemouth to the Lorient. But the transfer window is really, really disappointing. I know they've got the crisis off the pitch. They've lost their sporting director, but they've lost so many players, especially the up-and-coming academy talents for pennies, man. Kyle Budash, free. Gabin Bernardo, 1 mil. They're not getting big fees for these talents because they haven't platformed them at all. So clubs can just pick them off one by one. And they also haven't recruited. They've only signed one player, and it's Gauthier Hein. A quality Ligue 1 player on his day, but he was relegated with Metz last year in a career worst season. I don't know if it was his career worst for numbers, but in terms of performance and stature in the side, he was just another player. He wasn't that creative marksman that you needed. So I've got Nice 12th. I don't think it's going to be promising. Into 11th, and it's the other newly promoted side in Troyes. Now, it might be a bit of pre-season bias because they were the only team to go completely unbeaten in their pre-season for Ligue 1. Even PSG didn't manage it. But we've got to remember, they did win Ligue 2 outright last season. The only issue is they lost their 3 attacking sparks. Martin Adeline, Taoufik Bentayeb and Matthias Detolbe. I'm not a huge fan of the replacements they brought in comparison to the stature they built themselves up to last season. Like with Auxerre finishing up in 14th for me, this is more so to do with other Ligue 1 clubs struggling rather than Troyes excelling above their expectations. So yeah, I've got Troyes 11th. Not much to say on them. Good pre-season. And that's all we can really go off. Now, in 10th, I have Strasbourg, which is really strange to say with how high up they finished under Bluco. Obviously, they got Conference League 4 last season. They didn't get it this season. They got no Europe. They fell off towards the end without Panicelli and Rossini are gone and O'Neill in. But they were the only team in Ligue 1 pre-season not to win a game. They lost their first 5 games. They lost 7-0 to Sporting. 2-0 to Blackburn, 5-2 to newly promoted Bundesliga side Elversberg. It's embarrassing that pre-season. And I think back to the 22-23 season, or was it? No, the 23-24 season for us, Lyon, in Ligue 1. We had an awful pre-season. I think we only scored 1 goal in 6 games. Then we ended up being in relegation up until about December. Our worst ever season. We were categorically the worst side in Europe's top 5 leagues. And just looking back on that pre-season to this, you can see why I'm making the comparison. But the only reason they're not lower is that they've got the quality in the side. Our quality brought us through eventually. Their quality should bring them through. The new manager, Oliveira, did well at Famalicão. I think he got them 5th and 4th from about 10th to 8th before he came in. So he brought them up a little bit. And the main positive for Strasbourg, less so for their fans, but more so on the pitch, is they'll obviously get those 3 Chelsea loans. Philip Jorgensen in goal is already finalised. The same with Genesis Ambi at right back. And they'll probably get some sort of attacker. Probably Mikhailo Mudryk, let's be fair. They'll probably be all right. I don't think they'll be doing great because the young squad, it just doesn't work. They can't go a full season. And with how, I don't want to say good, but how much better the 9 teams above them look on and off the pitch, I can't see Strasbourg finishing higher than 10th. Apart from Marseille in 9th. And the reason they're in 9th, number 1, they can't afford to buy literally anyone at the moment. They're not linked to anyone. There's no rumours. They're just selling everyone they can. Everyone is up for sale. Højbjerg lost his captaincy, wants out. Balerdi wants out. Medina, gone. Rui, gone. Everyone's gone. Everyone's up for sale. You're not going to have a team at this rate. And as we saw with Lyon under Textor, when there's ambiguity of your situation, if your place is up for grabs, if you don't know where you're going to be come the end of the transfer window, you don't play well. The team doesn't play well because there's so much tension between everyone. The coaches, the staff, the players. It's a horrible environment. And to make matters worse, that management are already forcing decisions on new managers and Genesio. Højbjerg has been stripped of captaincy without even consulting Genesio. It's forced from the higher ups. Genesio's here. Højbjerg's down here, and he's lost his captaincy. And the middleman, which is the manager, who realistically is the most important person on match day, because it's an 11-man team and only one manager, obviously he's got his coaching staff, but he can't make the decisions. If he doesn't get his way, he's going to walk or the team's going to suffer. And I just can't see it being a positive, especially with the fact they've got Europa League to contend with as well. That's 8 more games at the very least. I can't see it being a positive season for Marseille at all. Obviously, if they do recruit, it could change, but the way things are being managed forcibly because they're in such financial constraints, I cannot see it being positive whatsoever. In 8th, a real surprise and a welcome surprise if this happens, I've got Toulouse. Now, despite big summer sales of Emerson for 32 million euros, Cresswell for 25 million euros, Metali for 30 million euros, so almost 100 mil brought in from 3 players, and the manager gone, I think they've done some really, really good scouting for their signings. Cheap, young, but already promising. They're scouting environments like Scandinavia, who are bringing these talents up, but because it's a lesser developed league, they're cheaper. So if Toulouse can almost platform these guys, make the money, but also benefit off a season or 2 of good quality development, it's a really, really good business model, and they're looking to be a bit more of a stable side every season passing. Now, their pre-season was a bit up and down. The manager, I don't know much about. He came from Motherwell in the summer. He seems calm, even though they lost their last 2 games. And like I said, I really do like their business. With the 10 teams below them having one thing or another going against them, when you're seeing Toulouse selling players, obviously you don't want to sell your stars, but when you're getting good money for them and then recruiting well off the back of that, there's no pressure on Toulouse to realistically succeed. I think they're going to do well. I think they're going to be all right this season, and I've got them 8th place. In 7th, which could be the Conference League spot, I've got Paris FC, finally pushing towards that Europe everyone was talking about last season. And then come January, they were in the relegation zone. But no, like I said earlier, that summer business last year was really poor in my opinion. They were throwing millions upon millions at young talents that weren't really scouted, weren't really planned for. Come January, when they were stuck in a bad situation, the business was much better. Loan to buys, loans for Premier League stars, these sorts of things where you get the talent in and you don't have a big outpay. And they've built upon that even further this summer. Coppola and Koleosho, yes, they were big fees to bring them in, both over 10 mil. They know the club. They now know Ligue. They played well last season, especially Coppola. He was brilliant for them. On top of players that already know Liga and are established in Liga, like Lassine Sinioko up top and Patrick Zabi in the midfield, who is an excellent talent. I think their business is really good, and I would have had them in guaranteed European places if their manager wasn't Liam Rossigna. I'm still a little bit iffy on him. I liked him at Strasbourg. Chelsea, he was really poor, but it was too big a step for him. And obviously he managed the youth at Strasbourg. He'll manage the youth at Paris FC. Can he take a team to Europe again? I'm not so sure. But yeah, I definitely keep an eye on Paris FC this time around. I think it was ludicrous people were expecting Europe last season off of promotion, but this season, I think it's more than plausible. Into our top 6, so guaranteed European places, and I can tell you that all 6 of these teams are also playing Europe this season. Well, you should already know that considering the other 12 teams are gone. But in 6th place, I've got Felipe Luis's Monaco. Last season was a bit of a write-off for Monaco. 2 managers up and down all across the season. They're hoping for a bit more stability this time around. They've lost star Manes Akliouche. They've brought in a new up-and-coming manager who's won things in Brazil, but can be questioned in the European game. And I guess the real question is, can they keep Lamine Camara? Can they keep Folarin Balogun? They've lost Chao Enrique. They've lost Crepin Diatta. They've lost Kasumu Ouattara. The fullbacks have been decimated. Yes, they've got Flavio Nanzinho from partner club Cercle, but the recruits aren't really there. And obviously they've got a strong squad as it is anyway, selling Bamba for 35 mil as well. I forgot about that. I think they need another season to rejuvenate. Obviously they've got Conference League qualifiers, which is 2 more games to stunt the start of your season, which I think could stunt the start of their season. I think the quality they've got will bring them above the 12 teams below, but I think there might be a bit of disparity between them and the top 5, which we're about to talk about, just because it's a new environment with the coach. It's the same players, but some new players, but a lot of talent has left, which is never helpful. In 5th, and this top 5, other than first place, has moved around an awful lot in my planning of this prediction. But in 5th today, and what I'm going with the season, is Lens under Dino Topmuller. Now, earlier on, I spoke about the family collective of Patrick Vieira's Le Mans. And I think the same with Pierre Sage at Lens. Yes, there were talent in the squad. Yes, they only had the league and the cup to focus on, which they did end up winning. I think without such a family manager to keep the team close-knit, and obviously Topmuller might do that, but Sage did it at Lyon. He's done it at Lens. I just don't know how they're going to do with the aging squad and these old players trying to rejuvenate their careers in Ligue 1. I just don't know how they'll do under a new manager and having to cope with Champions League. One of those two is going to be the real sticking point, and I'm not sure which one it will be yet. Obviously, Topmuller isn't a no-name. He's not a bum manager. He did well at Frankfurt. He's been in a couple of other places, whether as an assistant or as a manager. I think it just leaves a lot up in the air for Lens. Obviously, losing their best player, and arguably the best player in the entire Ligue 1 last season, in Mamadou Sangare. They've kept Flo Thauvin. They've brought in Ivanovic and Titraoui. But I just don't know about them. I've put them 5th. I think they'll struggle with the added Champions League games. I don't know. I might be wrong, but I don't know. I did have them 2nd at one point. I do just want to preface that. In 4th, I think one of only 3 teams to retain their last season's position to this season, I've got my club, Lyon. Now, Openda is a humongous signing. I'd have us probably 5th or 6th without him, but he already looks fantastic against Sparta Prague. It's only a loan without an option to buy, but it's a player a level above Liga. He's been and gone. He's gone to Leipzig. He's gone to Juventus. And you can see that there is a proper player in there. Yes, he hasn't scored, but I think he's going to be so important to our season. And the good news is with it, that it leads towards Pavel Schulz leaving rather than Malik Fofana. Now, obviously Schulz was so important to last year with his Thomas Muller kind of play, bagging goals from nowhere. There's a ceiling, you know. Malik can do so much more with the ball. He can create so much more. Schulz is just a very intelligent player. So if we can get the 25 mil for him and keep Malik, I think that's going to be even more important for the season, along with Openda. The attacking depth is great. We've got 2 or 3 players per position of top quality. You're looking at Remy Imbert, Nuama and Budash, Fofana, Duranville and Hamdani. The defence is strengthening every day while we're dropping Maitland-Niles, we're dropping Mata, and then Niakate and Cliver are learning how to play as a 2 with each other. I'm hopeful for the season. I think we can definitely be pushing for the top 4 again. I just hope we can qualify for the Champions League and get past Fenerbahce over these next 2 weeks. Into our top 3, so the 3 teams guaranteed Champions League next year. I've got another team finishing in the same position as last year, Lille. Now, a new manager can always be challenging, especially going from someone as experienced as Bruno Genesio to someone inexperienced as Davide Ancelotti. He's only managed 1 club. It was the craziness of John Textor's Botafogo. He got kicked out and then he resigned. No one really knew what was going on. But for me, there's not much to say for Lille in terms of regressing or improving from last year. They've done decent business in Baza Onal and Lunsa Danovic. They've kept their stars in Fernandez Pardo and Buadi for now. That could all change. But I think it bodes well for them. They did pick up the 2nd most points in the second half of the season last year. So there's clearly some momentum. They did have a decent preseason as well, picked up a point against Everton in their last game. I think they'll do well enough. With the level of all the other teams, with Lens having more fixtures and none of the other big teams like Marseille and Lyon being completely sorted financially and in the behind the scenes, I think Lille will comfortably be top 3, potentially fighting for the top 2. Speaking of that top 2, we've got Rennes and PSG left. I don't think anyone is expecting Rennes to finish top, so I have also got them in 2nd place. The reason for this, they were excellent under Francaise last year. He came in, they picked up the 3rd most points in his stint from mid-February. They were only behind PSG and Lille, and I think it was only 1 point behind the 2 of them. So they were on a real run of form. And that was after losing Jacquet to a shoulder injury. Now, as Rennes always do in the summer, they've spent a lot to reinforce this team. Mayenda, Charlie Cresswell, big fees. I think that's 40 mil combined for the 2 of them. But most of all, top scorer Esteban Lepore is absolutely firing on all cylinders once again. Merlan and Nagida look really good in pre-season. Ludovic Blas is getting back into the team. The creative spark they need. I think this Rennes team Yes, they've got the extra added Europa League this season, but it's the Europa League compared to the Champions League of Lens. I think there's so much quality, and Liverpool able to bag you a goal out of nothing in terms of in the box just scoring from anywhere. I think with the level of all these squads and all the big teams having Europe to contend with, weak squads or small squads, because that's just how Liga is now with the TV rights so poor, I think Rennes, under Ez, as long as they can project themselves off of what they did last season, I think they're going to be in a really good spot. I think it would be a surprise to see them finish second, but I think it's a definitely reasonable surprise to say the least. And of course, that leaves us with PSG. I'm not going to waffle about PSG, but they sold their unwanted attackers for massive fees, 155 mil for Ramos, Kolomouani and Kang In Lee. And then they've spent about that on their reinforcements, Akliouche, Gods and Ferran Torres. Really good business, but it always is with PSG. They've got so much pulling power, back-to-back Champions League wins. No one's really left because they don't need to sell. They've got all the money in the world. And I just cannot see them not winning. They're potentially even going to win another Champions League, let's be fair. I think Arsenal look good. I think Bayern look good. I don't think City will be there. I don't think Real will be there. Barcelona, can you win a Champions League or a knockout tournament with Hansi Flick style of play? I don't know, and I don't think they will. So I think PSG could do the Champions League three-peat and win, what would it be, 6 titles in a row since Lille won. I just cannot see PSG not winning this title. But that is the end of the predictions. Le Havre bottom, PSG top, and everyone else in the middle. My team Lyon 4th. As long as we can secure Champions League this season, we can do the playoffs next season as well. But if you did enjoy this waffle session today, please do like, please do subscribe. The Ligue 1 season starts on Friday. We're almost there now. It's going to be fantastic. So make sure to like and subscribe to keep up to date with all the news and content I can bring you. But until the next one, have a wonderful rest of your day.